So I started running the gateway drug, I called it London Marathon, classic, isn't it? So I started running when I was 20, I think 28, 29 was my first marathon. I lived in London and I sort of believed that was the only one. And I was like, I'll do it once. And so I started running a couple of years before that for mental health reasons. I was very ill and I just tried everything else. And then obviously living in London, I was like, oh yeah, London Marathon. And I stuck with that for like 6 years in a row. I just was like, London Marathon, it's the only one. And then it was a bit later on that I'm originally from Dorset, and my sister was like, oh, there's these trail runs where you can eat cake and you don't have to go fast. And I'm like, what? And started doing those and just realized that actually there was another way, and there was lots of lovely places that you could go running, and the effect on my body was bad, but it wasn't as bad as running on roads. And I just loved the community, and I loved the people, and I loved the fact it could give me this sense of being accepted. Like when you live in, I was working in the music industry, and I was very hyper aware of how cool I was and how what people thought, and it was really stressful and mentally awful. But when you're out with those people that in the trail community, it doesn't matter what you do or who you are. Like everyone is just kind to each other, and I loved it. And obviously then the trail marathons become 28, 29, 30 miles, and then before you know what's happened, you're in ultra zone. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into it, and then it escalated pretty quickly from there. Probably as a result of like deteriorating mental health, I just kept going further and further because I just wanted the gap between me hating on myself and not hating on myself to be longer, which meant I was running for longer and longer. And yeah, and then I ended up on the 50 milers, and then you end up on the 80 milers, then you end up on the multi days, then you end up on the 100 milers, and then before you know what's happened, you're standing at the start line of a 200-mile race.
Amazing. So what was your first kind of trail ultra that you did?
There's a race in Dorset called the Ox.
Mm.
So back in the day, the Ox was a 38-mile trail run. And when I signed up for that, I was like, well, this is it. This is the one. Super hilly, super muddy, lovely. And now that race has become a 50 miler that I think a lot of your readers probably will have done.
Mhm.
It's really great. It's lapped. So it's 10-mile laps, which sounds horrendous, but because it's so pretty and there's so many different bits, hills and bluebell woods and garlic woods, it's great. So that was my first one. And then quite soon after that, I went and did the Pony Express, which was a 2-dayer in the New Forest, 30 miles Saturday, 30 miles Sunday. And again, every time I did one, I was like, whoa, like I actually finished that. That's
Mm.
incredible. And it just was the time outdoors to think and be a human being that I loved. And you can't fixate on all your awful bits when you're fixating on just eating and running and being outside. Um, so yeah, those were the two. And then after that, I lived in London, so it was difficult. So you start looking just outside London. I did a lot of stuff on the Thames Path, and my first 100 miler was with Centurion,
Mm.
the Autumn 100, which is just outside London. So yeah, once I ran out of London, I just moved out of London. I sort of lived East London most of the time because you've got Victoria Park, you've got the Olympic Park when that was built, that was actually okay, and then you can run out towards oh god, what's it called? Like Hackney Wick and those sort of places have a
Mm.
little bit of green. Then I lived in North London for a bit, so I had Hampstead Heath and Highgate Wood, and you get lots of training on laps because you're going round and round parks, aren't you?
Yeah.
And occasionally I'd nip out to Epping Forest, but
Yeah.
then I was like, oh my god, there's massive hills.
Yeah.
They're not massive hills. I know now. But then,
Looking back, tell me about the South Wales 200. What's the route like, and what drew you to that challenge?
so South Wales 200 is run by an event company called Pegasus, and they're based in Wales. And I've done a couple of their events, and the reason I like them is because they're really, really inclusive. And my big thing is like to bring this to as many people as possible, this ultra running thing to as many people as possible, because I think it's one of those dare to dream things where people don't think they can do it, or they think it's really serious, or they think they have to be quick. And the imagery you're presented with, the people you're presented with, the heroes, Jasmine, Damien Hall, Nikki Spink, all great human beings, but all superhuman beings. And Pegasus don't have cut-offs. So they have a cut-off on an aid station. You can't set an aid station for longer than 3 hours,
Right.
but they don't have a cut-off on the race. And I loved that because it meant I'm an endurance coach, and it meant I could take clients, say, do this as your first one. Because if you walk a bit, if you feel like you're in inverted commas slow, you still get the experience of the time on your feet. And when I found out they do 3 200s, they call them the Wildhorse 200s, North Wales, Mid Wales, and South Wales. A couple of years ago, about a year ago actually, I went into Dragon's Back, or tried to do Dragon's Back, and I got timed out on day 2. So from that minute that I was timed out, I was like, no, I'm going to come back and I'm going to finish this off. So I'm trying to do as much as I can in Wales and get myself as much like bog ready and all that sort of stuff as I possibly can. I've done like 9 or 10 100-milers, and I was like, what's the next like natural progression to go up to 200 miles? And I wonder how I'll feel with food and lack of sleep. So I signed up to the Pegasus one because it's not the spine, and I've got the spine like lingering in the back of my brain, summer spine. But I'm like, let's see if you like the distance. Go and have a practice. They're lovely. You've got 5 days to do it. It runs from Chepstow in the east to Rossili Bay, Worm's Head, right in the far west on the coast, and it crosses the Brecon Beacons, the Black Mountains, and I've done stuff in the Black Mountains before. I love it there. I've done stuff in the Brecon Beacons before, and I love it there. And I like that crossing of a country. I'm big on crossing countries. I've done it a few times, and I'm just like, it's going to be great practice. It's going to be great to see if I like it, and I know I'm going to be supported. They've got 9 checkpoints. As I said, you've got 120 hours to do it, 5 days. You're not allowed to stay still or at the checkpoints for longer than 4 hours. But there's 3 sleep stations, one at 67 miles, one at 107 miles, and one at 140 odd miles. So you can have a sleeping bag and drop bag and sleep there if you want. There's hot food there. And the most important thing for me is that I could be crewed, because I have a crew who I take with me on most races, and I could be paced. And I was worried for my own safety, not because I think I'm going to get murdered, but because I will run tired and make mistakes. It was really important for me to have paces, so I had something to look forward to. I feel like a bit of a princess like that, and I'm kind of weaning myself off it, because I know the big bad races, when I went to Dragon's Back, no paces, no crew. When I was looking at the spine, no paces, no crew. So I want to be able to do it without them, but at the same time, I do see the whole experience as like almost like a fun time holiday for you and your mates. I mean, I don't know how much fun they have. They have a great time, but it just felt like, if you can say an accessible first 200 miler, it felt like that. It felt like the race director wants you to finish, isn't putting loads of blockades in your way, like cut-offs and this, that, and the other rules to stop you finishing. So that was why I chose it, and it was a good time of year. April is a good time of year. It was Easter weekend, which is renowned in Wales for being the only weekend for about 8 months where it doesn't rain. So yeah, it rained a lot before, and the ground was terrible, but it only rained for 2 days out of the 3.5 hours running. So I suppose that's a win, right?
Yeah, 100%. So what sort of training did you do specifically for this challenge leading up to it?
I actually feel like it's almost like my running life's worth. I've only been at work even. I've only been running ultras for about 8 years. In June last year, I ran the length of the UK. I ran from Land's End to John O'Groats on trail as part of a test run for the Run Britannia event, and it was like 1,053 miles. And we went on the southwest coast path, Offers Dyke, the Beacons Way, the Wye Valley Way, and then all the way up, West Highland Way through Scotland. So it was all on trail. Well, it was 50% trail, 50% road. And when I came back, I was like, oh, I really need another adventure. I had Dragon's Back, but that was very different. And I was like, I need something else to keep me ticking over. And I run a lot, I do like 3,000 miles a year, and but I need to have these adventures in, because I feel like that's the point of life. I just feel like the point of life is to go and do this incredible stuff. And so the training, I felt like I was match fit. I was exhausted after Umbra, and that's why one of the reasons I missed that cut off on Dragon's Back was it was 6 weeks after I finished that, so I was tired. So what I did was I looked at the diary, and I was like, arc of attrition, 100-mile race in January on the coast path. I DNF'd that the year before. I went back, and I was like, I'm going to finish it. So I did that as a training run. And I also signed up to the Centurion Virtual Slams. That was 600 miles in the first 10 weeks of this year, because I thought it'll keep me consistent, it'll keep me honest, and that will give me a real good backbone for a 200-mile event without overtraining, because there's the overtraining. But the other thing I did, which I think is absolutely key, after Dragon's Back, I joined a gym, and I was like, you're not, I said to myself, you're not strong enough. Like, you need to go and get your glutes and your quads and your ankles and everything strong enough, because the reason you're not quick, I mean, and when I say quick, I mean to meet the cutoff quick,
Mhm.
not winning quick, is because you're not strong. And so going back to the arc of attrition after 4 months strength training changed the game. And I came off out of that and I was absolutely fine. Wasn't winning awards for speed, but I finished it, and in really good time. And I was like much more confident. So the training really looked like decent, consistent trail running at a good low heart rate, comfortable, I call cruise control pace, plus the strength and conditioning, plus rest. Like, I'm rubbish at rest, but I was like, you have to rest. You have to, if you're going to break, you need to have the time to rebuild and then go again. And that's kind of how I did it. And there was all sorts of other stuff I did. Like, I practiced napping, and I practiced you know this, that, and the other. But that was what the training really looked like. And I had a good few 100 milers behind me, so I knew I could get away with 24, 40 hours without sleep. But I
Yeah.
didn't know what was going to happen after that. Everything else after that was an unknown.
Yeah. Was that quite scary then? Or was it kind of thrilling?
It was thrilling.
Yeah.
It's all thrilling. Like, it's like, oh my God, this is like, I'm so grateful I have the opportunity to test this stuff out
Mm.
in an environment that's relatively safe.
Mhm.
You've got people, you've got a tracker on, you've got people who are looking out for you. And I don't think, to be able to be given that opportunity and to be able to go and give it a go. There was people that walked the Wildhorse, there were people that were out there for 5 days, and I've got such respect for them, for their endurance, because
Mm.
it was wet,
Yeah.
and like, your feet were wet the whole time. And to be able to test where your limits are in a relatively comfortable environment, I say that for a lot of people it wouldn't have been very comfortable at all.
Yeah.
That's a great opportunity. So I saw it. My brain was flipping between, oh my God, this is terrifying, and this is the greatest adventure you've ever faced. And it's
Yeah.
an opportunity to test stuff and an opportunity to learn. And we don't get those very much, in modern life. I think being afraid of something means you should do it. I really do.
So you came in about 3.5 hours ahead of second female, who was Rachel Price. Did
Mhm.
you set out with the intention to win first place, or was it just kind of, we'll get to the end and we'll see how we do?
Absolutely not. Like, my plan A was to finish. It
Mhm.
really was. And I'd done myself a spreadsheet, right, based on my 100 miles times and adding a bit, and based on knowing I recce almost all of the route.
Mm.
So I knew what it was, I was letting myself in for. But I didn't understand how I was going to sleep. So I sort of put in, I'll do 90 minutes here, 90 minutes there. Didn't work out like that. But at no point was I like, I could win this. I didn't even look at how many females were in it.
Right.
I'm not interested in that. I'm very much a complete it rather than compete.
Mm.
Oh, this is great, you're first lady. I heard I expect you to win. And I'm like, ah, no. So when I went to have a sleep, I couldn't get a sleep, because I was like, you shouldn't be asleep. You should be running. Managed 15 minutes. I met Rachel many times. Like, we were together like a lot. She is so nice. And I wouldn't say I turned into Little Miss Competitive, but it was there.
Mm.
Like, it was just there. But I kind of resigned myself to, look, you're going to come top three, because there's not many women in this. I just didn't know how few women there were. And I can't say that I was racing her. It was there in the back of my head. Oh, and the more tired I got, the more competitive I got. And I think that's a result of tiredness. I think that's a result of clicking into, like, I've got a bad side of my brain and a good side, and the bad side is out to destroy me. And that competitiveness nearly ruined my race, because I just didn't get sleep. Like,
Mm.
I went to sleep at the second checkpoint for an hour where Rachel was. She left before me. No, and I wasn't like, oh my God, Rachel's leaving. I was like, whatever.
Mm.
And we kept like passing each other,
Mm.
and and it but it wasn't till I got to 70 hours where I'd had 75 minutes sleep, and that's where it all started to unravel quite quickly, because I was hallucinating so bad. It was so boggy, it was so wet, my feet were so sore, and I never get bad feet, but what can you do when they're wet for the whole thing? Because
Mm.
it was ankle deep bog for most of it. And it was at that point where I started to hallucinate so badly that I could no longer function, and my pacer was like, called in the crew and was just put me in a car, and I just like passed out in the passenger seat for 3 hours. that I didn't care anymore. I
Yeah.
just didn't care. I was like, you are messing this up by being competitive.
Yeah.
Even if you don't want to be, you are being competitive. And the fact that she came in three odd hours after me shows what an incredible athlete she is.
Mm.
Because it's not like there was half a day between us, or a day. It could have been either of us. It literally could have been. And I honestly didn't care. Like the define that race is defined for me not by the fact I won it, but by the fact that twice during it I started to mess it up for myself
Mm.
really badly. And I stopped both times and I just had a real calm conversation with myself and was like, what are you doing? You are literally, this is your life, you're living it right now and you're not enjoying it. Hungry and you're not doing anything about it. You are catastrophizing and you're not doing anything about it. You are whinging like a toddler and you're not doing anything about it. Just stop. It's not what you're here for. And that really helped me to
Mm.
like go that this is not about winning. It's about being on this adventure and testing all of these things you've learned about your mind
Mm.
and getting your toolbox out and fixing it on the spot.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful to myself that I could do that. And that is what the lasting legacy of this race is. Not that I won. That's a great thing. And of course I'm thrilled. And that's because I don't really win things. But that I managed to turn it around.
Mm.
Like when it got real bad, because there's been times where I haven't managed to turn it around and I've DNF races. On Dragon's Back, I think I probably could have turned it around and met that cut off, but
Mm.
I didn't. I just sort of admitted defeat and sort of just slogged through bogs, tears running down my face, being like, oh God, this is awful. That wasn't helpful to anybody, was it?
No.
So that's the lasting sort of legacy of this. And I've come out of it like more calm than I've ever been. Like I've usually come out and get depressed to start taking my performance to pieces and be like, you should have done this, should have done that. But I'm like, actually, you nailed that. That's the superpower, Emily. Like that is super.
How many hours did you sleep overall then?
I slept for 4 hours 15 minutes. I slept
Wow.
for the whole thing.
Mm.
My strategy was I can run 100 miles, no props, with no sleep. That's not a problem. So I was like, ignore the first sleep station, get to the second one, have 90 minutes. Get up, get to the third one, have 90 minutes, then you're finished. That's what I thought would work, because I
Right.
thought I could switch it on and off like that, but you can't, because sometimes you're not tired, especially if it's daylight and your brain's going, you should be making hay while the sun shines, you should be out there, you should be out there. So, and you can sleep in crew vehicles, but I didn't even think about that. I just thought, look, I'll sleep at the sleep stations. They're comfortable. My sleeping bag will be there. So that was the plan. And then when I got to just before I got to the first sleep station at 67 miles, there's the highest point in the race, Warnfack, which is a big mountain. There's a ridge line. And then you're on it for 10 miles. And then you go up onto Table Mountain, down into Crickhow, which is the sleep station. That night was awful weather-wise. It was really raining, super windy,
Mm-hmm.
and it was claggy to the point where you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Like your head torch was bouncing off the clag, so you couldn't see further than a metre.
Wow.
And I'd recce'd that bit, and I was like, so I thought it'd be okay. But when I got to the bottom of Warnfack, when I got to the bottom of the reservoir, the Glenfall Reservoir, I looked at my watch, and my watch face was black, and it had run out of battery because I thought I'd charged it and I hadn't.
Yes.
And I'd had the cable in my drop bag because I was like, well, it's charged now, so that's cool. So I was like, cool. Now I don't have a map. It's raining, claggy, and pitch black, and you're in the middle of nowhere. My phone has got 38% battery, and it's got water in the lightning cable. I can't charge it. I don't want to use this for nav because if something goes wrong, I need to be able to call mountain rescue. So I'm gonna have to find. So I went on the tracker and I saw there was 2 people ahead of me, about a mile ahead of me, and I was like, I've got to catch them up. I've recce'd this. I know that if I stick to this path, I should be okay. So that's what I did.
Yeah.
I eventually caught them up. These 2 amazing like Scandinavian dudes, and their watches were working. So I was like, please,
Right.
can I hang out with you? So I went with them all the way along the ridge, but it took a lot longer than I thought because I had to stick with these people, whereas I
Yeah.
knew there was runnable bits up there, but I had to stick with them or else I was going to die.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. So I hadn't planned to sleep at 67 miles, but I was like, you will go to sleep now because it's 2 o'clock in the morning. But then I found out about the positioning and I was like, oh no. So I didn't. And I started to self-sabotage. So I ate a tiny bit of mashed potato and nothing else. Then when I got up after my 15-minute stupid sleep, I nibbled on a bit of toast, left at 4 o'clock in the morning. Then that's when I had my proper like, it's like 75 miles. I'm starving, I'm tired, I feel like I'm under pressure. I hate this. It was that skiddy mud where you stand on it, you sort of slide sideways, miles. And I just was like, that's when I had to sit down and have a calm conversation with myself. Started to be like, come on, what can you do? And I was like, your crew are going to be here Thursday night. It was Thursday morning at that point. And I was like, ask them if they can come here on the way to the Airbnb, drop your sandwich. You're allowed to be crewed from now. And that's what happened. And all action stations went in, and then the sandwiches started to be dropped. And I was like, oh, actual food. This is amazing. And so, yeah, it was, the sleep wasn't what I thought I was going to get. And the plan didn't go the way I thought it was going to go. And then when I got to 107 miles, I was like, well, I don't need sleep now because I've had some, which I haven't. And it wasn't. And then I was like, I'm just going to crack through. I got an hour just before I met my first pacer before we went up towards the beacons. And actually, that was great. It was a really good hours kit. And then after that, I was like, that's it. I don't need any more. I'm going to crack on and finish it. Because I just wanted to get finished, to be honest. Really lovely sections. The sun came out. So I was starting to be like, oh, hang on a minute. Everything's great again. And then the third night. So I've been talking to my friend who did the Northern Traverse about the third night. And I think anyone that's run into a third night will know what I mean by, in capital letters, the third night. Where it just starts to get wonky. And I was with one of my best mates, and he was pacing me, and the terrain was horrendously bad. Bogs, just unrunnable, unbelievable, pitch black, very wet, very cold, feet were in bits. And that's when I started to hallucinate. Not the nice hallucinations I'd had by the Story Arms of elephants with their tails wagging. Awful hallucinations of like men with pigs' heads on and machines stabbing babies. And every time I looked up, whatever was around me got up and ran away. And then it got to the point where I just said to Julius, my pacer, I can't do this anymore. And I'd been walking behind him with like tears streaming down my face. I thought we were in like a chain gang marching to the library. I thought that he was late delivering a library book to the library. He'd forced me to go with him. I just said, I can't anymore. And he called the crew and they came and parked the car. And as I looked up to the car, there were 3 bins and they all got up, grew arms and legs and ran away. And I was like,
wow. Wow.
Burst into tears. Got in the car, passed out for 3 hours. So that was the longest sleep I had. But the minute I woke up, there was no conversation about, shall we stop, shall we go on? I just was like, let's go. And like put on a dry robe, got hold of a shake, got hold of a coffee and just started walking. And honestly, Emily, my feet were so sore because I'd slept with the footwell of a car and they'd all swollen. And so the blisters were now rubbing against the shoes. No fault of any of my kit. It's just, how do you look after your feet when they're wet for 80 hours? How? So
how
bad.
did you feel when you crossed the finish line then, when you know, that last mile leading up to it, you were like, oh wow, I'm a mile now?
Oh, it was just like, even the 17 miles to the end, the last checkpoint is 17 miles from the end. And that's when I'm like, this is it. I felt so much better. I'd eaten. I felt so much better. I met Joe, my pacer. I wasn't going to have a pacer because I thought I just want to do it on my own because I'll get super emotion. But I'm really glad he was there because he was proper making me laugh. My feet were really sore and it was like, just take my mind off my feet, please don't talk about my feet. And we actually ran, like proper ran. Like my crew were like, hang on a minute, like how are we supposed to get to the end before you do? And it sort of formulated itself in like a nausea where I had to go and like throw up in a public toilet and like I just needed a moment. And then the minute we got to the top of the hill, another hill before the end, on a cliff top. And they send you down off the beach and then up the cliff.
Yeah.
The final insult. My dog was there. And so she decided, because she hasn't seen me for 3 days, that we're going to be dropping 7-minute miles down the hill, which is nice for her, but not so great for me. So I didn't have time to get upset because I was just like, the dog is here. Even now, I sort of can't believe I've done it. That it's done.
Yeah.
But it was an incredible feeling, and it was just like one of the greatest adventures that I've ever had. Like, who does that? No one, no one will see the 4 forests look like that at 2 o'clock in the morning with like little diamonds of frost forming all over everything. And the sunrise we got on the this, what day was it, Friday morning, was just incredible. So yeah, the feeling when you cross the finish line, I think it's just absolute relief, and like, thank God I don't have to do any more of that. But I was really chuffed about how I finished, because I felt super strong, and I felt like if Reese, the race director, had said you got to do another 20 miles, if I'd been given a pizza, I could have done 20 miles. So maybe I should have pushed myself more.
No, I think 200 miles is absolutely incredible, honestly. So, nutrition wise and kit wise, was there anything that you particularly loved using?
I'm an Innovate ambassador, so obviously I was like all the gear, a little bit of idea. So I use the Trail Fly V2G 270s.
Okay.
They were amazing. They're so good. They're so light. I used them for the majority of it, and then I had a pair of the old Trail Flies, because I was like, these are super cushioned, so if my feet do swell, I can put them on. So I changed to them. I wish I'd had a pair in a size bigger, because my feet swelled a lot because of the blisters and the damp. There's no shoe on earth, I don't think, that would stop that, apart from Wellington boots. I can't
Yeah.
see why else you would do that. Even waterproof socks, the bogs are too deep, they're going to get full of water. I used the Innovate Race Elite vest as my bag, which is great because I had loads of pockets, and I'm
Yeah.
like, all that snacks
Yeah.
everywhere. Storm Shell jacket was amazing. The winter pants were amazing because they're waterproof. So yeah, all of it was Innovate. All of it worked like a dream. I took way too much kit. The crew van had a bag I didn't even open. And food wise, I was all over the Vela Forte bars and the Mountain Fuel chia gels and caffeine gels, as a sort of a between checkpoints thing. But my absolute key thing with these really long ones, including, the jog, was Mountain Fuel Morning Fuel,
Mhm.
a shake, and donuts, jam donuts. Like, jam donuts are the one. They're easy to digest. They've got the sugar, they've got the carbs, they've got the fat, and then little bagels with cream cheese in them. And cheese sandwiches. I didn't really eat much more than that. So yeah, and then I just drank water. I don't drink anything else but water, and took loads of salt tabs because they stop you getting nauseous and they help you to absorb your food.
Do you hope to return to the South Wales 200 in the future? And what other races do you have in mind for the rest of the year?
So the South Wales 200 was a test to see if I like that distance, and I do like that distance. So I'm going to look at they've got a North Wales one and a Mid Wales one. I'm going to look at doing them next year. I might even look at doing 3 in a year as a Grand Slam, but I've also got my eye on spine. So spine summer. So I really don't like being cold, and just don't like being cold. I think that's fair enough.
Yeah.
So next year I'm looking at the Challenger, the longer Challenger in the summer. The year after that I'll look at the spine proper, and then Dragon's Back next year. I'm going back to Dragon's Back again. This year's too early. I want to make this sounds. I'll put this out there. I want to make sure I podium at Dragon's Back. I will do well at that race. But then this year I've got a couple more hundreds. I've got the South Downs Way 100, the Autumn 100 by Centurion, and then doing the lap in May, and kind of looking for a new big adventure to do, like sort of September, October. Like I've
Yeah.
got my eye on the Southwest Coast Path and thinking of doing that whole thing. I just want something really big and chunky.
Yeah.
That because I think that the thing that ultra running teaches you is that there is, we're here to live a life. As humans, we're born to move, and it's like, to be outside and to have that time is it's such an incredible opportunity that anyone can have, and it just feeds your soul like nothing else does. And all of the problems and things that you come across, if you can solve those while you're on the hill,
Mm.
you can solve them while you're not. And so yeah, there's a lot I've got in my head that I want to go and do. The longer it is, the more interested I am. It's Brecon, it's brutal, but it is not designed to kill you. There's no such thing as a professional ultra runner that knows everything. We're all learning all the time,
Yeah.
and you don't have to go and suffer to be an ultra runner. You can go and really enjoy it. It's just about picking what you decide to go and do. You don't have to do what everyone else does. So yeah, it was awesome. I loved it.